found the real Peacemaker. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It is now time to talk about Peacemaker Part 2. The second half of the first season, a series by James Gunn on HBO Max. I did a review of the first half of the season as it came out, and it's taken me a couple weeks to get to the second half of Peacemaker. Oh, this show is garbage. I watch this stuff so that you don't have to. I thought for sure people maybe wouldn't even be interested in a review of this show because I was like, who's actually gonna watch it? And then I saw that IMDB gave it an 8.5 out of 10 and Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 94%. So it seems that this video is a bit more necessary than I originally thought. If you haven't seen my review for the first half of the season, go watch that and then come back and we'll talk. So without further ado, let's dive right back into where we were before. Number 1, the plot. To be fair, the plot in the second half of the show picks up considerably after the first half of the season. But unfortunately, the show spends a lot of time manufacturing small issues that take up a great portion of time in the show. And they spend a lot of time trying to make the fact that Adebayo is Amanda Waller's daughter a big deal, which is really interesting to me because it was as underwhelming when we found it out in episode 1 as it was when the characters found out about it later. In fact, Myrn comes out and says, oh yeah, I knew the whole time that she was Amanda Waller's daughter. And that's kind of how the TV show tells us to accept that. Obviously, some of the team feels betrayed, but it doesn't end up going anywhere. And I just have to ask myself, besides the fact that I already know why they included the character of Adebayo, which doesn't take much brain power to assume, why would they want us to think that it was a big deal just to have characters be like, meh, it doesn't really matter? And even though this is a superhero slash anti-hero TV show, what they try to do with her character is so much more unbelievable that everything at the end with the plot kind of just seems about as exciting as the reveal of Adebayo being Amanda Waller's daughter. Until the final episode, the plot really seemed like it was okay, but when you find out why things are happening the way they are and the drive behind the main antagonist, you can definitely see why all of those super valid movie critics gave it the high score it got. I'll give you a hint. The main drive behind the antagonist rhymes with global warming. This show is so freaking stupid. Plot gets a thumbs down. 2 is family friendliness. Now, we already talked about the first half of the season and how it's like absolutely not. Extreme graphic sexual nudity, blood, gore, violence, profanity, constantly. But in the second half of the season, there is graphic violence, gore, tons of profanity, but I don't have to spend much time on that. Family friendliness overall, huge thumbs down. 3 is acting and script. Despite the first half of the season being totally uncharacteristic of Peacemaker, the second half of the season, we get to see some of the fun parts of Peacemaker. He absolutely pwns noobs. He's out there murking people left and right. His tactical brain is exactly how it's supposed to be. He's very skilled with all weapons and hand-to-hand combat. So the fact that they tried to make him completely useless in the first half of the season is really dumb because it doesn't go anywhere. The nonsense bickering between characters does decrease a little bit, but it's still very present at least in episodes 5 and 6. All the actors and actresses do a decent job acting, but the script is so bad that it doesn't save the show. And obviously with what happens at the end of the show, the script of this show is garbage. So acting and script get a thumbs down. 4 is character development. Again, in the first half of the season, a lot of the character development was about Adebayo. We wanted to see a TV show about Peacemaker and his history, his past, why he is the way he is, and have his character built throughout the show. And it doesn't happen. Because of how much they forced Adebayo to have relevance in this show, instead of her being a character that helped build the character of Peacemaker, it just made the show all about her. In fact, in my opinion, Amelia Harcourt would have been an excellent dual protagonist to build the character of Peacemaker, and in fact she did. There was different moments throughout the show where she did build the character of Peacemaker, and it was more effective and natural than what we saw with Adebayo. Problem is, it only happens like 2 or 3 times with Amelia Harcourt, but it's still more genuine and real than what you see with Leota. So unfortunately, Harcourt's character arc is wasted as well. The character arc of Peacemaker's father ends terribly because of the lack of character development and interaction interaction with Peacemaker in the first half of the season, what ends up happening between him and his father in the second half doesn't really have a huge impact. And it makes that whole relationship fall really flat in the show when it could have been one of the most impactful things in the show. And again, the fact that Leota is the main character of this show is really frustrating because they don't even do good character development with her. Basically, her character development is, wow, you know, you're qualified for this job. It doesn't really seem like you are. Oh wait, you're not qualified at all? In fact, you owned an animal rescue before you came and did this, and you've never done anything even close to what we're doing here? Just kidding. No, you're completely qualified because of who you are. Yes, it's frickin' checking a box. It's so irritating, and just, you have to be irrationally stupid to think that this makes sense and that this is okay in a TV show. And at the end of the show, even though Adebayo literally has betrayed all of them because of her relationship with her mother, we're told just to accept that Adebayo and Peacemaker are just the best of friends. And it's like, okay, how much willing suspense of disbelief am I gonna have to use here? The fact that the walking checked box that you threw into this TV show is able to do all of these things and save the day, and that all of the professionally trained agents and superheroes are rendered useless because we want to promote this. It's so obvious that this show is focusing more on virtue signaling and not producing a good story, that the whole character development is completely garbage. I will say, there is one moment that was the most character building moment in the show that happened in the 8th episode. Economos had a monologue where he was very honest about some things in his life. That moment was the most emotional moment of the show. Everything else in the show was garbage, and it was really frustrating to watch what could have potentially been good character development failing miserably for the sake of virtue signaling. So character development gets a huge thumbs down. 5 is CG. Like I said, the second half of the season picks up really well with the violence and action and some of the abilities of Peacemaker's helmets and some of the creatures, and that's what we wanted to see, but we don't get to see a ton of it. What we did get to see of Peacemaker kicking butt is super fun to watch. And the CG overall looked pretty good, so CG gets a thumbs up. 6 is rewatchability. No, I don't care what all the big reviewers are saying about this TV show. It is actual trash. I knew what I was going into for the second half of this season, and even after disengaging my brain and knowing what to expect, it was still disappointing. There were so many things at the end of the show that didn't make sense. The fact that Adebayo and Peacemaker all of a sudden became friends, the fact that Adebayo tried to make Peacemaker feel guilty for what he decides to do at the end of the show, which the alternative literally would have been the Earth being taken over. The fact that we're supposed to believe that Peacemaker is the main character of this show. The fact that Adebayo literally outs Task Force X and Amanda Waller at the end of the show. Like, there's so much about this that is just an absolute dumpster fire. It actually has a good chance of tanking the DCU, because if virtue signaling is the direction that DC is going to try to go, it's going to fail miserably. This TV show is so painful to watch, and rewatchability gets a huge thumbs down. This show overall is an absolute pile of trash. So with everything that I've talked about, I have to give Peacemaker Season 1 a 2 out of 10. Some of the fight scenes were cool. There were 1 or 2 cool character moments. There was a cameo at the end of the show that was freaking hilarious and easily the best part about the show, but the lack of character development, the massive virtue signaling at the expense of actually making a good story, the misplaced protagonist in the manufactured character of Leota, and the constant nonsense bickering back and forth between characters is absolutely insane. I don't know how, as a movie critic or an audience member, how you could enjoy this show when there's so much wrong with it. Absolutely do not waste your time with Peacemaker Season 1. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen Peacemaker Season 1, let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate all your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.